everybody, welcome to my YouTube channel. In today's video I'm going to be sharing something that I've been asked a lot of questions about both on YouTube and in my personal life, and that's for an update and overview of my experience now that I've hit 6 months of using Mounjaro. I'm going to give a really honest overview of my side effects, both negative and positive, the impact on my appetite and relationship with food, but also the impact on my life overall, and some of the information that I wish I'd have known prior to starting Mounjaro that could have influenced my decision to start earlier, equally could have prevented me from starting at all. So for anybody that's been watching my channel or is new here, I've been documenting my health and lifestyle journey effectively with Mounjaro, which I began using on the 1st of May this year. So this is kind of a big update, so let's get into it. Okay, so let's rewind to why I started using a GLP-1 medication to support my weight loss. In August of last year, I reached the highest documented weight that I have, which was 20 stone 12 pounds, or 132 kilograms, or 292 pounds. At that point, my BMI was 41.4, so in a health perspective, I was morbidly obese and had spent much of my adult life being morbidly obese. I hadn't suddenly gained weight. I've struggled with weight gain and weight loss since I was 13 years old, which is when I first put weight on. And so for the last 2.5 decades, I've been in a battle with losing weight, gaining weight, losing weight, gaining weight, and had very much fitted the criteria of being a yo-yo dieter. And by the time I came to start Mounjaro in May of this year, my relationship with food and health was at the lowest that it had ever been. I also have health issues, so I've got a diagnosis of polycystic ovary syndrome and irritable bowel syndrome. I was also following a diagnosis of gestational diabetes in my last pregnancy in 2021, a 50% increased risk of developing type 2 diabetes. There's also a family history of diabetes. My maternal aunt had type 1 diabetes, and so I was very, very likely going to be diagnosed with type 2 diabetes in the next few years. Now, as I said, it's not like I had all these issues and had struggled with my weight and never tried anything. I've tried every weight loss plan and diet plan and exercise plan probably known to man at this point. I've tried Slimming World, Weight Watchers, restrictive diets, water fasts, extreme exercise plans, and whilst they were successful in that I've managed to lose quite a lot of weight on those, they weren't sustainable and I was never able to sustain the weight. So as quickly as I might lose 5.5 stone, within 6 months, not only would I have gained that weight back, but I'd likely be heavier. So when I came to the point this year of using Mounjaro, it was almost out of desperation, and I had absolutely reached the limit and knew that I needed to do something quite extreme to achieve long-lasting, sustainable results. So I passively began losing weight in August 2024, and when I say passively, I mean I knew I needed to lose weight, but realistically, I wasn't in the mind frame to lose weight, as I've talked about previously. And it was probably around that time as well that I had begun looking at Ozempic, because that's the one that was most out there in public. And I'd gone through the process of doing a lot of online consultations for various different, I don't think it was Ozempic, it would have been Mounjaro or Wegovy. So gone through the online consultation process, got to the point of having the medication in my cart and then backing out at the last minute through fear of not knowing really what the injection did, being scared of the side effects. So I had gone through that process quite a lot, probably since August of last year. I then lost some weight, around 0.5 stone, could have well been fluctuations within my body, but it spurred me on to continue to lose weight. And so between August and November, I lost 4 stone 6 pounds. But from November to April, when I went to my GP, I had begun to gain weight again and used extreme methods such as extreme deprivation, high levels of exercise to bring that weight back down. So between November and April, I'd fluctuated sort of between gaining 21 pounds and losing 21 pounds. And when I went to my GP in April, I'd reached all despair. I recognised that I had stopped being able to pull it back, and I was just increasing in weight, and recognised that that same cycle of losing weight and then gaining weight and more was happening. And I'd no doubt that by the summer of this year, I would very likely be well over 21 stone. And so I went to my GP in April, and she recommended that we do a referral to tier 3 weight loss, which in the UK is fat loss injections. And so on we went through that and it was accepted and it was a successful application, but there was like an 8 to 12 week wait. And so I decided, on the back of my GP basically giving it the green light, that I would purchase these privately. And we talked about Mounjaro, and I made my decision that I would use Mounjaro. So at the end of April of this year, I went online and I ordered my first 2.5 milligram Mounjaro pen, which arrived 4 days later, and I took my first Mounjaro injection of 2.5 milligrams on the 1st of May. So with Mounjaro, you have to start out on the smallest dose, which is what I did. So I started on 2.5 milligrams. And in my first month, so the breakdown, in my first week, I lost 8 pounds. My second week, I lost 5 pounds. My third week, I lost 6 pounds. And in my fourth week, I lost 2 pounds. And so overall, for the first month of using Mounjaro in May, I lost 21 pounds or 1.5 stone or 9.5 kilograms. I was really, really happy with those results because I wasn't struggling like every other time where I've purely gone on motivation. I didn't feel hungry. I didn't have the food voice talking to me, telling me to eat more, and I didn't have that battle with myself. I wasn't conflicted. So after 4 weeks, I went up to 5 milligrams, which in hindsight, I wouldn't have done because the 2.5 milligrams was continuing to be successful. I remained on 5 milligrams for 8 weeks, and then I went up to 7.5 milligrams, which is the highest dose that I've used since being on Mounjaro. In that first month, there was also an aspect of having to get used to using a medication, which I have a diagnosis of health anxiety, and that did not come easily. Every time that I went to use the injection, there was an anticipation of fear. What is this going to do to my body? What are the long-term consequences? And so that was a fear. Equally, I had convinced myself that I wouldn't be able to administer this medication correctly. So for my first 2 or 3 pens, I watched a tutorial every time I went to administer the injection of how to prep the needle and how to give myself that jab. In hindsight, I didn't need to do that. Again, it just fed into that anxiety. Now, I did have side effects, but I'll be honest, in that first month, they were mostly positive. I noticed an increase in my energy levels, quite an extreme increase in my energy levels. And the biggest side effects that I noticed positively were that I had no appetite whatsoever, to the point that initially I went a few days without eating. And because that's the pattern I'd become used to on a weight loss journey, I was thrilled with that. I very quickly realised that I needed to manage this appropriately because it was a medication and I needed to make sure my body was healthy. But equally, I didn't have that food voice. And so for me, those were the 3 biggest side effects that I noticed going into that first month. In terms of negative side effects, I used to get a headache after I used the injection. It felt a very hormonal headache, and I'd have that for sort of 1.5 days prior to using the injection. It was managed. I could get on with things. It was just there in the background, and I would just use painkillers if I needed to. But with actually drinking lots of water didn't make a difference. I used to get that anyway. And I also noticed that I would develop like a rash and be really itchy on the injection site, which typically means that you've had a bit of a reaction to the actual medication itself. I also noticed that I struggled with high levels of anxiety after. Now, I'm anxious anyway. I've got health anxiety, as I've said, but in the first day and a half after using the injection, I absolutely felt that anxiety increase. And it was only after a few weeks that I really put 2 and 2 together. Now, subsequently, I have spoken to a psychiatrist, not to do with me, but I was having a conversation with someone who is a psychiatrist, and he said that there is an emerging theme of people using weight loss injections. He wasn't specific, but as to which one, but in the UK, experiencing increased difficulties with their mental health. And it's something at the moment that as a profession, they are flagging to the companies and within the NHS. So that's a really interesting piece of research that I guess is coming out or is going to be coming out in the future. Quite simply, that first month, food just was no longer appealing, and food has never not been appealing, even when I've not been hungry or even when I've loathed the idea of eating and food. It just wasn't appealing on any level to me, and that was something that came as a real shock. Even though I understood what this medication was going to do, when your appetite and your interest in food goes and you've never had that, it is quite shocking. And it's also liberating. There's a freedom to that. You're not thinking about food all the time. I thought about food all of the time, every day, and suddenly you're liberated from that and you're not anymore. So in months 2 to 6 is when I really started noticing the changes. I was losing weight every single week. I did have weeks where I plateaued. I had one week where I had a really difficult week and I ate everything I shouldn't have eaten. When I didn't have Mounjaro, I went 2 weeks without having Mounjaro and my weight went up by 5 pounds. Instantly I thought, I need to deprive myself, I need to starve myself, get this weight off and start again. I didn't do that. I just went, no, eat normally, it will come off when it comes off. That is something I've never done. And within the same week, I dropped the same 5 pounds and I had to maintain that week. I just became less bothered generally. I'd noticed that I had non-scale victories in terms of not only clothes that I had in my wardrobe that I haven't been able to fit into ever and I've had in there for years. Suddenly I could go out and I was able to take an interest in buying clothes, and I took more of an interest in my personal care and I was enjoying doing that. I didn't feel like ashamed of going out and doing that, whereas before I felt ashamed of self-maintenance because I felt overweight and I felt horrible and I felt judged by society. So I also felt I was judging myself. So every day when you walk out with that, you're already dealing with that because it comes from you. Quite simply, I didn't feel, the longer this journey's gone on, I haven't felt like I'm in a weight loss journey. I've not had any of that dip in motivation. I've not had to make really restrictive choices. And ultimately what I've noticed is that my whole relationship with myself and lifestyle has changed. Now, I'm not naive, I've talked about this before. I'm using a medication and I'm still using this medication. And so I've made lots of healthy lifestyle changes. I eat a balanced diet for the first time in my life. I eat 3 meals a day. I don't deprive myself. I don't look at food as being good and bad and look at myself as being good and bad depending on what I eat. I don't do that anymore, but I only have evidence that I can make these changes whilst I'm on Mounjaro. And however, I guess the reality is I have a life now that for me feels worth living, whereas before I deprived myself of a life. And so that's the biggest change positively for me. In terms of the side effects, what I would say is the longer that I've been using Mounjaro, and I've stayed at a 7.5ml dose now for 3 months, and I've brought a 10mg pen that I am microdosing 5mg. I did accidentally use 1 dose of 10mg, which I won't go into here, but I did. So the plan is to titrate down now. So go to 5mg, eventually go down to 2.5mg, and then aim to be off by sort of between February and April of next year. However, my side effects have become more severe and more unmanageable the longer I've been using the medication, and I can't say that's due to increased doses because I didn't start to get lots of these symptoms until halfway through my second 7.5mg pen, and they are not pleasant. And if somebody had said to me, particularly the last one, I think I probably wouldn't have started Mounjaro, in all honesty. As much as it's had a really positive impact on my life, I am really struggling with this last side effect at the moment. So I've noticed that the longer this has gone on, my gastro issues have appeared. So one of the things I was really worried about when I began using Mounjaro was all the things I'd heard on TikTok and Reddit and YouTube about people experiencing gastro issues, so diarrhea, bloating, stomach pains, sulfur burps. And I thought when I started and I didn't get any of those, I'm in luck. Like, I obviously just respond well to this. It doesn't do damage, like it's not doing those harmful things to my body. And then I started using 7.5mg, and as I said, halfway through my second pen, I think it was, I started to experience stomach pains and sulfur burps, and I still have those, and I've used all of the things I've been recommended and they don't appear to be reducing. So it's just constant all day. I wake up in the night with sulfur burps. It's really unpleasant. They smell really bad, they taste really bad, and I get quite a lot of stomach discomfort. I've also been experiencing bloating and diarrhea. And again, that hasn't gone. It tends to go further into the week, but when I first used the injection, it's 3 or 4 days of being really uncomfortable. And I've also noticed that the medication only lasts 5 days. So if by the 5th day I get to the 5th day, and by that point I'm starting to feel increased hunger. Day 6 and 7 I'm very hungry, and so at times I've used the injection every 5 days. What hasn't returned is the food voice. And for me, the worst side effect that I've experienced, and I am really, really struggling with it, and I'll be completely honest, if somebody had said to me, you're going to experience this. So it's very unclear whether it's directly related to Mounjaro or it's related to the fact that I've lost so much weight in such a short space of time. So overall, I've lost 140 pounds, but since May, so in the last 6 months, I've lost 90 pounds, and I know that that's a huge amount of weight to lose. However, I am desperately struggling with this one, and I am umming and ahhing as to whether I want to continue using Mounjaro at all. And that is hair loss, and I'll insert a clip here. And my hair feels... I've never so much had thick hair as I've just had a lot of it, but I am really struggling with I'm actually scared to brush and wash my hair at this point. Now, I've gone through periods of time when I've lost hair, but not to the extreme levels that I am now. And so I currently am using something called Hair on Me, which is, you go online, it's like a prescribed ointment that you put on your hair, and I'm using hair vitamins, I'm increasing my protein, I'm using rosemary oil, but it isn't slowing down at this point, and it is quite alarming, because I'm really worried that I'm going to end up with really, really, really thin hair or worse. And so if somebody had said that that was going to be a part of this experience, in all honesty, I wouldn't have used Mounjaro. It's actually quite first world problems, I get that, but it's quite upsetting, and to not want to brush your hair or do anything with it because you're worried that it's just going to come out is a bit crap. But, you know, I'm doing what I can, hopefully, to mitigate that. But I am, in all honesty, considering just stopping Mounjaro altogether. Unfortunately, I haven't really been able to get any guidance about this in particular. Yeah. So for me, that is something at the minute I am really, really struggling with. So ultimately, in the last 6 months, I have developed really, really healthy habits that I have never in my life developed. It's always been about, and when I started this journey with Mounjaro, it was about losing weight fast. How can I lose all this weight really quickly, and then I'll get near to where I want to be or there, and I'll worry about all of the other stuff. That hasn't been this journey. Quite quickly, I established that actually, for whatever reason, I needed to make active lifestyle changes, which I've absolutely done. I eat breakfast now, I eat a balanced diet, I worry about fluids, all of those things, which for me have never been a part of a weight loss journey, apart from the very, very initial stages. So just in the last 6 months, I've lost 90 pounds, which is 6 stone 8 pounds, or 40.8 kilograms. I've got it written down. So, I mean, that's just amazing. And as I said, I'd began losing weight previously. So in total, I've lost 140 pounds, which is 9 stone 8 pounds, or 67.5 kilograms, which, as I've said repeatedly, is like the weight of my 2 youngest children. And if I think back now about how I was functioning, if somebody said to me, hold River and row me and walk around all day and do everything you need to do, I just wouldn't be able to do it, and I wouldn't be able to breathe or function. And how I was doing it for so long, I can't imagine the level of strain that I put on my body. So what I wish I knew, I think before you start on any journey with any health or lifestyle change or medication, always get medical advice. I've not had the easiest with that, but absolutely seek medical advice and go through all your worries and concerns. Do as much research as you possibly can. Now, I think use legitimate sources, and whilst, you know, places on social media, YouTube, TikTok, Reddit, are brilliant because they are the experiences of people, any journey that you do is going to be individual to yourself. And so as much as the guidance of others, and, you know, you're going to have similar experiences to others, but I think definitely go and cross-check those with somebody that knows about a GLP-1 medication, which in my experience, just because someone's a medical professional, absolutely does not mean that they understand or know about Mounjaro. Actually, I think if you go to a medical professional that doesn't, it can be really unhelpful in terms of supporting you to make a decision either way. It isn't a magic fix. You're not going to use Mounjaro or Wegovy or, you know, whatever you're using and wake up and be 5 pounds lighter because it's literally melted your fat away. It's not going to change anything unless you decide to make those changes yourself. So yes, how this works for me is it's taken away the food voice and the appetite, and it's essentially regulating my body in ways my body wasn't regulating itself. But if you don't make the lifestyle choices, you're likely, if you ever come off of the medication, to go back to where you were. Equally, you're probably going to feel really, really unhealthy. Side effects are real, I think, and you don't have to experience them straight away, which in some ways feels, I think, a bit deceiving, because you think, oh, I'm in the clear here, I've been using this for 2-3 months and I'm fine. And in my experience, actually the more difficult side effects have come later on in the journey. Now, as I said, with the hair loss, I'm not saying that the root cause of that, no pun intended, is Mounjaro. It's very likely to be that I've lost an extreme amount of weight. However, I'm not saying it isn't Mounjaro, but that alongside the gastro issues have come much later in this journey for me. And I think if you listen to your body and you are aware that could happen, I suppose on some level maybe they're less shocking. I was sort of under the impression, because it had gone so well and I'd had really positive side effects, that ultimately I wasn't going to experience any. And so then when they did happen to me, it was quite alarming and a bit shocking and a bit upsetting, actually. Mindset matters, and that's the point I was making earlier, that you could use any of these weight loss jabs, or you could do any weight loss intervention, but if you don't shift your mindset, ultimately they're going to really be short-term changes that you make. So any weight you do lose, if you don't change what's going on upstairs and how you think about lifestyle and food and health, you're going to probably end up doing what I did, which is be stuck in that cycle of gaining weight, losing weight, gaining weight, losing weight. And I think use this medication as a stepping stone to alleviate some of those issues that you can't get rid of, maybe, for example, like me, like the food voice and the extreme hunger, but use it as a stepping stone to grasp those and make the positive changes. Now, those changes differ for everybody. I calorie count mostly, but I'm trying to increase protein and fibre because that mitigates some of the side effects. So, for example, constipation, which I didn't mention, was something I'd had earlier on. But don't become complacent, because I think I can't remember how long they say it takes 20 days to form a good or bad habit, and you could do that either way. Like, for example, you could really reduce your calories because you're not hungry, but then what damage is that doing to your body long term? And then are you going to be able to sustain that if you then eventually come off of this medication and you're eating 600 calories a day? Probably not. And so you're going to end up possibly in a cycle like I did with Slimming World, where I used to join, leave, rejoin, leave, that you could end up using Mounjaro, not using Mounjaro, using Mounjaro, not using Mounjaro, which ultimately is going to be really unhealthy for your body. So 6 months in, would I recommend this medication? The reality is, as I said, it's a really conflicting one for me, because it's absolutely really positively changed my life. But I am at the minute going through a not very nice impact of weight loss or Mounjaro, which is this hair loss, which I am hoping will stop, and I am doing all the things that I've been advised to do. However, I think every journey is individual, and so at the minute I'm conflicted. But if somebody had said to me a month ago about this medication, I would have said, if it's right for you, use it. And I think any weight loss intervention is, if it's right for you, do it, but absolutely get all of the information you can. Tool yourself up with all of those questions. Get those questions answered by your prescriber, by your doctor, by whatever means. Look online, do your research, hear other people's experiences, but absolutely remember this is individual, and what has happened for one person, even if you've had something similar, it's going to be different somewhere down the line. And so you just need to tool yourself up with all of that information. But in my experience, albeit the last few weeks have been a bit more difficult, but this can be a really, really positive stepping stone to probably doing all the things that many of us have promised ourselves we're going to do for years, which is get healthy and lose weight and focus on nutrition and lifestyle. And so if you're looking to do that and you're going to do it sensibly and you're going to follow the guidance and look after yourself, both in your mind and in your body, then I would absolutely go for it. But just remember that the side effects are real, that it is still a medication, that you need to prioritize health. It isn't a quick fix, and the mind matters. It's ultimately all about how you feel and how you think, and go with that and listen to what your body is telling you. So I hope this video has been helpful, and if it has, or if any of my other videos have been helpful, then please do like. It really helps the channel. And if you haven't subscribed, and comment as well, like share your experiences and advice, or you know, if you're thinking of starting a GLP-1 medication and you've got questions that I might be able to semi-answer, please do leave it in the comments. Equally, you know, it's a really good community and people are really helpful and knowledgeable as well. But as I said, it's guidance because everybody's experience is individual for them. It's been a positive 6 months in so many ways. I just recognise the need to look after oneself within this journey, and that's ultimately going to come down to the individual and how able you feel to do that. But if you're going to start, if you have started, or if you're on another weight loss journey, the best of luck, and I hope that you have a happy, healthy route into 2026.